Oops. LLMs have encountered a very fast evolution. It started with attention is all you need. It's all you need. So that need was going to be supplemented by context is all you need. You need larger context, for example, with RAGs. Nowadays, the latest model proposes thinking is all you need in addition. So that's the current state of LLMs. Is that all we need? Is something missing? We need an opponent to counter hallucinations. Something I said in the discussions, to repeat it now, embedding vectors are not meanings of expressions. One wants not to formulate what sounds good but is false. One wants not repeat what others put out on media, internet media. That's not knowledge. That is not what LLMs should provide as answers. One would seek what is best justified. One would like to make plans for scientific inquiry. All that is missing. No model can do that. Not in the slightest, not in the beginning, and there's no hope with the current technologies to achieve these missing goals. Do we have hope? I want to issue another item, what is needed, namely validation. Validation is all you need, maybe something else, but it's what you need. That is something which provides reason for and against the truth of a proposition. It provides arguments for or against the truth of a proposition. It provides evidence for or against the truth of a proposition, and it provides reason for and against the pursuit of actions. The discipline which deals with it is new. I termed it computational epistemology. That's a new subject I propose, which deals with the methods and the methodology to fill the gap of validation, what you all need, namely epistemic agency. You need to be able to identify the propositions beyond sentences. You need to identify arguments in texts, in sources, in historical inquiries. You need to identify intentions, plans, and actions of person, documented and leaving their traces of actions in historical documents. How do you do it? Here you see a screenshot of a working environment. On the left-hand side, you see open a historical source, in that case, in the context of the construction of the castle of Sanssouci by Frederick the Great, a few dozen kilometers outside of here. And it's a long issue in the history of science, in how far one of the finest mathematicians of the 18th century, Leonhard Euler, was involved in its construction, and whether his involvement was partly due to his fault, a failure, or to the failure of others. It was one of the biggest failures of construction in the 18th century. And historians of science have long disputes and quarrels of who was the responsible source of this failure, Euler or others. An open question. You want to make an inquiry. Can AI help you in that inquiry? What you see here is a working bench in which you can formulate the inquiry. What you can formulate, hope you can see the mouse, is a question. Konstruiere, welche Personen an der Wasserfontäne welche Arbeiten ausführten. And then I want to have a validated answer, a qualified answer, which can be rely on proven evidence, and which answer is correct, not just hearsay. And what you get here is a list of persons you never heard about their contributions, when they worked on what, for what money, and what they achieved and what they did not achieve. What you see here, just to explain the working environment, is the typical inquiry window here. Oops, sorry, down in the bottom right. There you have the environment is called cursor. It's a working environment by which you can use AI agent to do all sorts of things, even automatically. Also in this case, our agent is called quite presumptuous Bernoulli. So we research with an AI Bernoulli to inquire these sources. But when here the first difficulty begins, it's not just reading one PDF source in the library, but you want to search all available sources. And they must be in some sort available, but indexing and concentrating on tokens is not enough. What do you need? You need 6 components. One is you need a scholarly curated editorial board which has worked on the sources. In that case, for example, that is one of the sources. It's Opera Omnia of Euler himself. 86 volumes of work, scholarly worked about 120 years by different scholars. It's finished 2 years ago to edit all the letters, all publications, 866 publications, and all letters. It's complemented by other scholars, and that is the scholarly reliable source of one person. What you also need is, and that is new, you need also a scholarly, we name it Scholarium, source for, and that is the substitution for embeddings. You need something like a curated, if you want, a database of content items, like a chronology of actions, a chronology of expressions communicated by one person to the other. You need to have a chronology of the use of terminology, of language by a person. You need to have a chronology of use of tools and material things that person has used in history, validated by sources, and so on. So it's a very detailed inventory of historically proven activities of which you have a historical record. When you have these records, then you can inquire them with the usual accessible multimodal models. We found out that it's best to use multimodal models now to solve the requirements of this task, namely the latest models of Gemini 2.5, for example, which can combine information from text and from image together. We need a long, fair repository for storing and publishing our data. That is Zenodo, hosted by CERN in Geneva, which makes it possible to host these data for many years. We have technical support. I founded a startup, Open Science Technology, which serves the technical support of running the infrastructure. For example, also an MCP API server, which makes it possible to access all these data via worldwide inquiries of artificial intelligence models via a standardized API. So something like that. Well, one never knows whether there's another development in next month or years, but this is an attempt to standardize AI access, APIs to knowledge in the community worldwide. So it's an open collaboration. Thank you very much, and I hope I'm on time.
Wow, you even beat the time. That's really great. Okay, cool. So now we have more time for discussion. You can tell me once there's people in the chat, or I might even see it here. No, I don't. But anyway, so anyone? Okay, Andrea. Wait. Great, thank you.
So I wholeheartedly kind of applaud to this presentation, and you're arguing for good qualified sources and a workflow which kind of keeps the human expertise instead of trying to replace it by something maybe a bit dodgy. Well, anyhow, what do you think about the transferability of this kind of approach to other kind of areas where they might have same source material? So, and in which way that could be organized, yeah? Because as long as I'm observing also the world of digital editions or digital humanities at large, and I'm also active in the DARIA ERIC, yeah, I see that things are very much tailored for a good reason, yeah? But at the same time, everybody wants to also scale up and link and cross. And this naturally has a friction, yeah? So if you wanted to have good quality, that's also sometimes people not always understand. So if you wanted to have good quality, you are confined to a silo. Yeah. If you really want to drill down, you can't drill down in whole of the earth. I mean, even in geography, that wouldn't be possible. You wouldn't like to do this way. But what do you think about the transferability of this approach?
Yes, you touch on one of the most important aspects of doing scholarly work. Then we know, and I'm in that business since several decades, and even 30 years ago, the Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft decided not to support digital humanities 20 years ago anymore, because they found out that they founded projects, interesting digital humanities projects 30 years ago, and they realized after the funding stopped, the program was practically dead. So it evaporated. And it's one of the major problems in research policies, to leave a maintained infrastructure where these scientific achievements are maintained for a long time. Therefore, this project, which you see here only in a slide, the Euler edition, I happen to be at the moment the president of the Bernoulli Euler Commission of the Swiss Academy. And the Swiss Academy founded this project of the Euler Opera Omnia 110 years ago. So it's a long-lasting project. And we wanted to make it, transfer it to the digital era in such a way to ensure that the scholarly expertise is maintained and transformed into the digital age. So we have solved all these copyright problems and all that, so that what typically plasters many projects when they make contracts with professional publishers. They insist on getting exclusive rights, and that's usually the dead end of a project like that. So there are many different aspects to ensure that the very valuable scholarly work in the past is maintained for the future, which means in that context, that knowledge which you refer to about the person and activities of Euler, make a reference to this Opera Omnia. so that when you cite something, what the person say, you are able to also give the sources and the background of its validity. So in the part of the validation process must be the justification of past scholarly work. So that goes into citation processes and so forth. It's a bit too complicated to use my answer time for that, but you need to take care of it, and your question is well-founded and justified.
Cool. Maybe it's a question that we can also discuss further in the board. There was one, the next comment is here.
Yeah, thanks for this stimulating talk. I liked your idea of computational epistemology, and I would like to know a bit more about it. It seemed to me that you are skeptical about storing information in unstructured text. So this with a question mark, because you talked about databases, and probably I think you have the idea of having epistemic relations between propositions or something like that. So do you have the idea of a kind of semantic epistemological web or net? Or so could you say a bit more about the idea behind it? Because it seemed to me that as you're skeptical about the embeddings, you don't want to have too much information stored in unstructured text. So this all with a question mark. So please say a bit more about it.
Try to be brief. First, I'm not against unstructured text. I'm against using unstructured text in an unstructured way. So when you want to answer simple questions, for example, what did Euler do between January 1576 and 1708? So very specific thing. You want to have a complete chronology of all his activities which have a historical validation. This answer has nothing to do with whether it's structured or not. You want to have a complete list in a format, whatever it is given, even in Markdown, something like that. But the answer must be complete. That is the important point. And you don't get it with any approach which is available now. You don't get these answers, which means basically for historical research, these tools are unusable. You need to have a complete answer. And especially when you use negation, you need to have a very good complete answer. You need, for example, to exclude that Euler did communicate with that and that person. Look just at the proof structure of such a sentence. You need to have an apparatus which can satisfy that requirement. And for that, you need these registers. Forget about embeddings. They will not solve it. No RAG will solve that. You need to have some sort of prepared data, whether it's structured or not, which gives you a full chronology, in that case, of all the activities, and then you can answer it. So it's answerable, but you need to use the right tools.
Okay, now we have 4 more comments, 2 in the room. This is Adrian, and who was it? You, was it? And then there are 2 in the chat. I suggest we collect them, and then we see how much time we have left. Okay, Adrian.
Okay, yeah, I was also interested in this computational epistemology, and again, would like to hear more about how you could do that. It seems, as I understood also, Paul, that you would like the model to really see the logical relations and so on. And the question would, of course, be how could we achieve that, and why isn't it possible yet? But let's collect the other questions.
It's on? Yeah. Basically the same question. How do we come into, so after having a scholarium, how do we get further, and where are the challenges? So which steps have been difficult to achieve by now? And my question on the scholarium, what could you say something about that? How do we choose it? Which amount of text do we need? What is sufficient and what not?
Thank you. I will read now the 2 comments from the chat. So one is, what is the Bernoulli model you are using in Cursor? The standard LLM models in Cursor are OpenAI and Claude only. Did you create your own LLM model, or where did you get it from, and how is it helping your case? That was one from Alex. Now comes another one from Swaltner. What kinds of editorial or structural considerations, like encoding practices or annotation strategies, would you suggest keeping in mind when curating a corpus with potential LLM applications in mind? Thanks to the people in the chat.
Sorry, could you repeat
The second one?
The
Yeah.
second one.
So what kinds of editorial or structural considerations, like encoding practices or annotation strategies, would you suggest keeping in mind when curating a corpus with potential LLM applications in mind? Okay, now you have 2 minutes left. 3.
All important, very big questions. I try to answer them in sequence. The first was Adrian also tried to help me. It's logical relations. When you look at the current planning models, which are around, they sometimes can be instructed to make their reasonings visible. When you do it, then you see how poorly they reason. So when ask a simple historical question, find about that and that evidence, show me your reasons how you do it. And then they reveal their reasoning strategies, and it's very poor. I don't want to go in the details, they are very poor. What you can teach them is what a regular, normal scholar, how you would teach to approach these questions in the university. How would you teach it? You give rules. These rules can be formulated in normal language. Look for evidence, look in the catalog what evidence is in that question, collect it, read through the books, find all occurrences of events concerning that and so forth. So these are instruction rules.
1 minute left.
These instruction rules you can collect, comprehend, and then you have a text of instructions. All models can understand these instruction texts. And now the big LLM models have a very large context. So the Gemini models, for example, 1 million tokens. That's enough for all instructions you can think of. I, for example, have instructed my models to understand causal reasoning, to understand basic propositional logic, to understand basic scientific experimental justification. These rules can be put together on condensed 50 pages of text. So that's a 20th of the context length of a model. You don't need more. You can feed it in. That instruction text is part in the model, and now I come to question 4, I think, what you see, the Bernoulli component.
So we don't have time.
The cursor.
We don't have time. We have to have the 5 minutes for the transition phase. I'm sorry. But we had more discussion already. So we have to take it. I'm sorry. But there were these questions from the chat, and I think the Bernoulli one, maybe you can answer it in the chat to the person also, and then everyone can read it. And the other question relates to how we can actually curate data sets, having in mind that we want to analyze them with LLMs. That's how I understood it. It's a really interesting question. I think I will take it also later to the discussion session, and we could think about that.